Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the In Ohio Country Today podcast, part of In Ohio Country Today television show. Dan Wilson with you, and on the phone with us is the director of FSA, Farm Service Agency, part of the United States Department of Agriculture here in Ohio, State Executive Director Leonard Hubert. Director Hubert, thanks for joining us today.
Dan, my pleasure to join you this afternoon, certainly.
Let's talk a little bit about your background. Let's talk about how you landed here in Ohio.
Well, certainly. I said I made a little trip from the south to the East Coast in Pennsylvania, and then made my way from Pennsylvania to the Great Buckeye State. But originally from Alabama, and I did my practical experience in a livestock and crop background. Left high school, went to Alabama A&M University, where I did my undergraduate and graduate work in ag business. Very much involved in both 4-H and FFA. Proud recipient of a state pharmacy degree in FSA and Future Pharmacists of America. And so made my way to Ohio in the mid-'90s. Spent some time out at the Ohio Department of Agriculture. Spent some time in the governor's office as well as Director of External Affairs. And in the last 2.5 years, in November of 17, got an opportunity where I got a call from the White House and got an opportunity to ask if I would serve as the State Executive Director for the Farm Service Agency in Ohio, and that's where I've been since November of 2017.
Well, obviously, amid the COVID-19 crisis, there's probably a lot of things that you've been juggling there at the FSA office in Columbus. Let's start off and talk a little bit about what farmers are doing here with regards and what's available to them with regards to how they can apply for financial assistance through USDA's Coronavirus Assistance Program.
Oh, certainly, Dan. Most everybody should know by now. Back in March of just early part of this year, the President signed a bill that Congress authorized from what is known as the CARES Act. And within the CARES Act, there is a provision provided to USDA, $16 billion to be made in direct payments to provide to farmers and ranchers impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. In addition to the $16 billion, there was an additional $3 billion that were given to the department as well, and where those dollars were spent directly with food banks and those agencies where the restaurant industries and others were seriously impacted by the virus as well. And so, and that $3 billion was used in order to purchase fresh produce and dairy and meats. But most specifically, our responsibility from the FSA responsibility is to provide the $16 billion in direct payment to producers who was greatly impacted by the pandemic environment.
We're on the phone with Leonard Hubert, State Executive Director for FSA here in Ohio, courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance Group. Let's talk about what's happening aside from COVID-19 and how that's affecting your department and what you can do to help our farmers here in Ohio.
Well, that's an excellent statement, Dan. If you indicated, we look back for the last 5 years, most economists, and specifically ag economists, will tell you that those have been some tough 5 years to pass economy for the ag industry. And so if you go forward back from 18 months, past 18 months, we've actually, this FSA agency, we've stood up actually 6 ad hoc programs two disaster programs. We did and this also includes the new farm bill from 2018 as well. But we've done a number of programs, the new dairy market margin coverage program. We did, of course, the most recent one that most of us are familiar with, the market facilitation program, the MFP. And so we've taken every step. The administration has taken every effort to understand what's happening within the economy of the ag industry, and have made every effort to provide assistance as needed to aid our farmers and ranchers across the country.
We're on the phone with Leonard Hubert, State Executive Director for FSA here in Ohio, courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance Group. You know, as we know, agriculture in Ohio is our major industry, with one out of eight Ohioans employed in the food and agriculture industry, which contributes over $124 billion to the state economy, economically speaking. And we talk about what's happening with our farmers. One of the things that we understand with the Farm Service Agency, and especially the USDA, is to make sure that there is a safety net out there for our farmers. How important is that safety net?
That safety net is critical, and I think we've seen that evident with what has taken place during this pandemic. I tell my friends who are not engaged and involved in agriculture, if we start looking at some of the other countries and where people are paying, $15, $20 for a pound of hamburger, some other product, and some meat products where they're not able to get meat. And then you can understand the importance of agriculture and how it plays from the safety net programs that USDA provides to our producers, because the aid and assistance that we provide to producers, there's a direct correlation with respect to how that helps all citizens who are being able to take advantage of all the great products that our producers grow and raise and produce at a cost in which they can afford.
We're on the phone with Leonard Hubert, State Executive Director for FSA here in Ohio, courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance Group. The FSA has made some changes to farm loan, disaster, conservation, safety net programs, and made it a little bit easier for customers to conduct business. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Well, certainly. I think one of the things I certainly want to mention, Dan, with respect to the CFAP program that we're talking about now, the Corona Food Assistance Program, it is a very streamlined approach program. Is producer self-certification, meaning that the producer basically fills out the application, provides some general information, provide that to our offices, and then it is then our responsibility to take that information and put it into a system. It figures out what the payment is for those producers, and then we anticipate and expect that a very quick turnaround. We're talking within hours or days to get a much needed assistance, financial assistance to producers. But as we mentioned, this program was a program that was authorized by Congress, signed by the president, but within USDA, we've consistently looked at ways in which we can provide assistance to farmers. And so for the first time, and I say this because this is not a mandate from the White House. It's not a mandate. This is forward thinking on the part of the USDA, where for the first time we are expanding what we call our set-aside loan provision for our customers impacted by COVID-19. And so basically what that means is we broaden the use of the disaster set-aside, what we call the DSA provision in our loan program. And so producers who have FSA loans and who are affected by the COVID-19 can are eligible to have their payments set aside. So those producers who have loans with us who is impacted by COVID-19 have the ability to have their loans set aside as well as a part of what we're doing right now. So all of those producers need to do is just make contact with our office, speak with our farm loan staff, and we'll be more willing to assist them in that process as well.
We're on the phone with Leonard Hubert, State Executive Director for FSA here in Ohio, courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance Group. You know, Director Hubert, one of the things you mentioned is communication. Let's talk a little bit about that before we take our first break and how important that is communication-wise with our farmers out there to make sure that they're crossing the T's and dotting the I's and making sure that they're taking care of business and you guys are right there for them.
Well, communication is critical, and one of the things that we've consistently been doing is obviously is when we're communicating and having conversations with our producers. We're urging our producers to keep their information updated with our officers. The need for their updated information relative to their email addresses, their cell phone numbers, and their home numbers as well. But as you know, Dan, in today's time, with the cell phone numbers, most producers may have the cell phone in their pocket, have it sitting in the combine or on the tractor with them. Certainly right now, folks trying to get some planning done. And we have the ability, and we do that, we can text constant information to our producers just on a given basis and send information out that way. So we're continually encouraging and first thanking our producers for communicating with us, but we're urging them, to make sure that they got the personal contact information, the cell phone numbers, email addresses, as well as their home numbers updated with our offices. And so even given that, especially at a time like this where we have not, we are having on the ability to meet with the producers via phone, this is an excellent opportunity and a great chance for us to say how this really works. And so they don't have to get into the vehicle, make a drive down to the county office. We love that, but obviously we're not doing that at this particular point. But there's a tremendous amount of information about all our programs, what is taking place, that we can share simply by through text messages or through information through emails as well as our websites as well.
We're on the phone with Leonard Hubert, State Executive Director for FSA here in Ohio, courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance Group. You know, Director Hubert, technology has really changed the way that our farmers communicate with the FSA office, and it's incredible how we've been able to streamline the process because of the advancement of technology, isn't it?
There's no question about it. I mean, I was always laugh with folks, and you get in a combine today, or you get in a tractor, and it's all the GSP system and guided. And I recall my days as a kid growing up, and our GS system was to find a tree or find a pole or find something that didn't move, and you line it up straight, and that was your path to the day. And then for the next 12 hours, you better not make a crooked road.
That's great. On the phone with us is State Executive Director Leonard Hubert from the FSA office here in the Buckeye State. Director Hubert appears courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance. We're going to take a time out, and we'll be back right after this. You're listening to the In Ohio Country Today podcast.
Our farm department is committed to providing ag professionals the products, coverages, and peace of mind needed to run a successful operation. With our home office located in the heart of farm country, many of us have first-hand experience when it comes to farming, and we know how to take out the risk. Under one policy, we can provide total protection of your investment, from your home and barns to your equipment and livestock. We also provide an outstanding equine coverage, from a homeowner with a single horse to a professional breeder and everything in between. Come join us and experience the Salina difference.
Welcome back to the In Ohio Country Today podcast, part of In Ohio Country Today TV show. And as always, you can get more information about our podcast and our television show by going to inohiocountry.com. On the phone with us is State Executive Director of the FSA Farm Service Agency here in Ohio, Director Leonard Hubert. And Director Hubert, one of the things that we experienced last year, which was really tough here in Northwest Ohio because the amount of rain that we had, was the prevented planting acres. And you wanted to talk a little bit about some of those disaster programs.
Certainly, Dan. If you're correct, last year, if you may recall, we had in the Buckeye State, actually 86 of the 85 of the 88 counties in Ohio receive what we call Secretary of Disaster designation, which makes the producers in those specific counties eligible for disaster assistance programs. And so last year, and mainly, especially in your area, we had a total of 1.5 million of what we call prevent acres in Ohio. And one of the things that we saw early on in this process when we were doing this last year is, especially in your area, excess moisture was a big concern, and we expressed that. And so, as when what we call wildfire and hurricane indemnity program plus what we call WIP plus, there was a provision included in that program for producers where excessive moisture was included as an estimable cost. And so sign up began in September 11th for our WIP plus to help producers affected by those natural disasters. And so that program is, as I said, we just started that back in September, and it's ongoing. And so we have we've been seeing a number of applications, obviously, working their way through. And so that's another one of those great safety net ad hoc programs that we're able to provide assistance to producers as well.
We're on the phone with Leonard Hubert, State Executive Director for FSA here in Ohio, courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance Group. Since we're talking about Northwest Ohio, I want to touch base with what the FSA is doing in conjunction with the governor's office and the H2 Ohio program. We recently received information in the last couple of weeks that the governor's intention is to continue funding that program after the COVID-19 crisis. And obviously, once it hit, there was some indication that they were going to do some pullback as far as funding is concerned. But why don't you touch on a little bit of the H2 Ohio program and the importance it has in our state, especially when it comes to our environment?
Oh, certainly. I think so often when we mention the term conservation, we typically look at it as the erosion and those kind of, I would say, day-to-day things that take place on the land and cause issues and concerns for the farmer. But conservation is a much bigger issue. It's a broader issue where all of us need to be concerned about. Obviously, kudos to the Ohio legislature and to Governor DeWine with respect to getting and seeking the funding needed for the H2 program. And so you're right. The concentration on those 11 counties up there is ongoing. The governor and the administration, the ODA, the Department of Agriculture, State Department of Agriculture, is considering, is continuing to working on those efforts. There is obviously some relationship with not just with our agency, FSA, but our Office of Natural Resource and Conservation Services with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. They're partners in this process as well. We have been extremely pleased with our conservation program because up in the Western Basin area, we have Lake Erie CREP program, and we have a proud partnership with the State Department of Agriculture, where they do a match funding, and so that allows for us to obviously increase the number of producers in that program. But one of the, and you talked about the importance of conservation. We started up this year with a new program, what we call Cliff 30 program, and basically what it is for the first time, this is a new program. Producers who are typically coming out of our conservation programs. Most of our programs, it's an average of somewhere 10 to 15-year program after you can re-enroll. And then the program, they're out of the program. But under this new Cliff 30 program, we're talking about those producers who are coming out of our programs have the ability to enroll in the Cliff 30 program, and we're talking about a program that will last for 30 years. And so here's another great opportunity for us to put into conservation practices that's going to not only be helpful to our producers and providing that great soil health and environmental health issues that relate to the producers, but also it's just that obviously it's just the concern that's been raised in the West Basin with respect to Lake Erie and gosh, every time I think of Lake Erie, who can't? And if you enjoy Lake Erie, I mean, you got to think about wildlife fishing and all those great things, in which I like to do myself. But it's a tremendous amount of opportunity there from an economic perspective from tourism to just about anything that you can possibly think of. And so just another great opportunity for us to take advantage of conservation practices.
We're on the phone with Leonard Hubert, State Executive Director for FSA here in Ohio, courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance Group. We had the opportunity to interview Director of Agriculture here in the state of Ohio, Dorothy Polanda, several times on our television show in Ohio Country Today. And of course, we attended a couple of meetings too during the sign-up program for H2 Ohio, and there was a lot of enthusiasm there. We want to remind our producers that even though the COVID-19 crisis has affected the financial situation, if you will, in the state of Ohio, the governor's behind it, the FSA office is behind it. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, certainly. As I said, we have a I think all of talked about that this morning, but one thing I like about Ohio, and certainly like about the ag community in general, we have some great partnerships We consider ourselves members of a very unique and proud family. As you've indicated, agriculture is the number one industry in Ohio. And so I know for a fact that Director Palenda wants to ensure that the H2O program will continue. And certainly the relationship that we have with the department, as I indicated earlier, with our CREP programs, where we have partnership with them, as well as our sister agency, Natural Resources Conservation Services. We're all working together for the betterment of the producer, and obviously not just the producer, but for the 11.5 million citizens of Ohio. That's what we do on a day-to-day basis, and that's done through collaboration, as well as through the programs that we just talked about, as well as working through these pandemic issues and other major issues that we are faced with, to ensure that we're doing everything that we possibly can be doing on a day-to-day basis to help our producers and as well as our citizens.
We're on the phone with Leonard Hubert, State Executive Director for FSA here in Ohio, courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance Group. Director Hubert, before we let you go, let's talk a little bit about the website, fsa.usda.gov. There are some great resources there. I mean, you guys provide a number of different things that our producers can go to. The FSA's Guide to Farm Loans, for example, is a great guidebook that simplifies information on all types of farm loans, and everything that we talked about today and then some is available at your website. Let's talk about that.
Dan, there's no question about that. We're constantly inviting and recommend everybody to check out go to our website. As you just said, that website has a plunder of information. You can't, any and everything that you possibly can think about is there. Is most, as we spend a tremendous amount of time today to talk about, the disaster program, CFAP program, and some other safety net programs. One of the things in Ohio, at least I get a chance to brag about it, is the fact that we have a very strong ag farm loan portfolio, and so those the list of all of those programs. We listed. We talked specifically today about the CFAP program. We talked a little length about the conservation. We talked about the WIP Plus program, but we have a number of other what we call indemnity programs, like for bee producers. If producers have been hurt with vultures and some of those other creatures out there that bring havoc. We have programs to assist producers in those areas, and so we encourage individuals at any given time spend a little time on our Farmers.gov website, and it's abundance of information there. And one thing we always say, and we never want to leave an opportunity and not mention that, is if you want to know more information, specific information about our programs, pick up the phone, call any of our FSA offices, and they're all capable, great staff of being able to answer any specific questions about any of our programs.
Our guest today has been State Executive Director of the Farm Service Agency here in Ohio, Leonard Hubert. Director Hubert, thank you so very much for joining us.
Dan, thank you very much for having us, and we'll be honored to do it again at your request.
And Director Hubert has appeared courtesy of our friends at Salina Insurance. You've been listening to the In Ohio Country Today podcast. And again, for more information, you can always go to our website at inohiocountry.com. That's in OhioCountry.com. Have a good day, everybody.